We're setting up the scene, Aaron, for those listening.
Bam, chicka, where? I don't know if I can watch with a straight face. Hold on.
Well, keep in mind that
obviously, if you cuss every day and an F-bomb is like a comma, you come a bit desensitized. We were puddle jumping because I can't call ducks, right? I mean, hey, duck, that's about as good as it gets. So we were puddle jumping. Yeah, there ain't a lot of talking coming from me. I just like, okay.
Right.
Let me write that down. I have to say, not a huge sales pitch here. I was skeptical of Bowtech.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, that poor bow, it got cliff tested several times. I had 168 on my back, plus 2 bows. So there's, the prodigy flying through the woods, and I'm chucking it in the closest bush I can as, I'm tucking and rolling. We got done last night. I shot the 120. It's still on like Donkey Kong. And I'm like, well, that's a good testament.
That's sort of the more of the redneck way to me. Like ambush hunting is like the pro way. Like you throw out decoys and, rednecks run from waterhole to waterhole.
Why, yes, Brian, it is true.
That sounds terrible. The days of our lives.
Hello, alright, you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen, home of gritty bow hunting films, interviews, tall tales, and a wee bit of manly boasting.
I'm South Cox, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Hey, this is Cory Jacobson, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
We born and raised outdoors, and you've been listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
There you go.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Jordan.
And you're watching
the Gritty Bowmen.
If you like the show, please go to our website at grittybowmen.com and subscribe to this podcast and tell your mates and pals about us. Do us a favour and please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes or on our YouTube channel. Send your questions and podcast ideas to grittybowmen@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can see the video version of this podcast on our website at www.grittybowmen.com.
On this episode of Gritty Bowmen, we travel to the Bowtech factory headquarters in Eugene, Oregon, and get a sneak peek at the new Bowtech bows for 2016. Cory Miller of XXX Archery and Jason Phelps of Phelps Game Calls joined me for a discussion with John Hernandez. Arguably, you could say that John has been at Bowtech since its inception, but I'll let him tell you the story in the podcast. In the span of time that John has been there, he has performed several different leadership roles. In this podcast, John tells us about Bowtech's design philosophy, he tells us about the new flagship bow for 2016, and John gives us a little bit of history on Bowtech. While at Bowtech, we had an opportunity to shoot the new bows. As Jason Phelps is built like a Wookiee, he tried to rip the new bow in half by slamming into the draw stops at full draw, which is about half draw for Phelps. Don't let this camera make you nervous, Phelps.
I'm gonna be like this.
What is your draw length?
32 and a half, 32.
That is ridiculous.
Bring it. Test them limbs out. 40 pounds?
I think it's got 2 more inches in it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, man.
It seems to hit a little earlier than you expect.
40 pounds.
Don't you got like mew or something right before you shoot?
I am pleased to say that the bow handled the abuse just fine. I've been shooting Bowtech bows for more than 10 years. Every year, I try to get out and shoot the new bows made by all the bow companies, and there are some sweet bows out there. But I keep coming back to Bowtech, and this new bow doesn't disappoint. I would love to hear what others think about the new bow, and about all the other bows that are out there this year in 2016. Which bow is your favorite?
If you like the show, please go to our website at grittybowmen.com and subscribe to this podcast and tell your mates and pals about us. Do us a favour and please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes, or on our YouTube channel. Send your questions and podcast ideas to grittybowman@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can see the video version of this podcast on our website at www.grittybowman.com.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. We are here today at Bowtech. I'm here with my friend Cory Miller from XXX Archery Shop and Jason Phelps from Phelps Game Calls. And we are here in the office of John Hernandez at Bowtech. And John, tell us a little bit about who you are for folks who don't know.
So, I've been with Bowtech since it started pretty much. And, I actually owned an archery shop in the late 90s. And the way I got introduced to Bowtech was the former CEO and designer actually came up to our archery shop, and I've shared the story a lot, but I remember it vividly. He pulled up in a Cadillac, right? And so John Strassheim is an awesome dude, man. But he jumps out of the Cadillac, and then he had Kevin Strother, who was the designer at that point, and they come into our shop, and one guy's in a suit, and the other guy's wearing shorts, and they pull out these bows out of the back of this Cadillac, and they're all in mill form, meaning the risers were just aluminum and the limbs were black, and the cams I think actually had Sharpie on them, but they were raw aluminum, and said, hey, we're starting a bow company and want to know if you guys would be our first dealer. And so the good Lord blessed me with the ability to kind of play with bows and understand them. When I looked at them at that time, this was in '99, I was like, man, this is cool. And having a short draw length, I immediately started asking about the specifications on the bow and the performance levels of them, and immediately knew, hey, this was something that could be very cool.
Because you're not a real tall guy.
No, 5'7" with shoes on, and those are the high heels. So I'm kidding, but yeah, no, I'm not a tall guy, and so but I think that performance means a lot of things to a lot of people. But for me, at least back then, it was and that's when 300 foot a second bows were kind of starting to be like, hey, they were out there, but they were very unforgiving, so to speak. And so in that day in '99, they had a dual cam bow, which a lot of people will remember, the Black Knight was a dual cam, and IBO rating to 350 foot a second. And so they came, Bowtech came onto the scene with a lot of performance. But that's kind of how I started with the company. We were Bowtech's first dealer. Just a few short months later, the CEO offered me a position. I like to say that I really came knocking at his door begging, but I was like, how do I become a part of this? But I went to the very first trade show in January 2000, in Indianapolis with them, and I remember they'd asked me to go, and as a dealer and having pretty much the most experience from a field person with the product at that point because it was so new, if I would go and kind of help them out from a sales perspective. And I thought, geez, this is great. When do you get your plane ticket, as a dealer paid for to come out and help somebody? And I remember stepping into the booth that day going, man, this is a whole nother side of the world that I haven't seen in terms of archery. So, I was an archery enthusiast, growing up. I've been bow hunting for, about 25 plus years, and went from that to owning a shop, and then now I got to see the manufacturing side of the world, and it was just phenomenal. So I came on in March of 2000. I've been here ever since. So
wow, that's a run.
It really is.
That's a long run.
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, it's still considered a very young company, right? 16 years is not that long.
Yeah.
But when you're living, sleeping, and breathing it every day, it's it definitely seems like it's a little bit longer, but yet it still has gone by very, very quickly. So one thing that I've learned about this industry is, the barrier to entry is pretty small, meaning, if a guy has an idea about a product, a machine shop, or a mill in his garage, that's how a lot of companies get started up. They just get in there and start grinding parts away, and pretty soon, bam, you're a company. And one thing I've realized, from Bowtech's early days, we literally were a couple miles, south of here in a room that was probably maybe twice the size of my office right now. And we had a receptionist, one laptop, one PC, and a fax machine. That was it. Our facility was in Louisiana at the time, where they built bows. I mean, we'd literally call somebody up, order a bow, and we'd send fax the order down there. They would hold it on the ground and put a bow together. And that's where it started to today.
So, when you're talking about the barrier to entry not being, very difficult, there's a lot of bow manufacturers out there, a lot of bow companies. What is it that is really different about Bowtech, would you say, compared to your the other competitors out there? What sets Bowtech apart, both in terms of the products, I guess, and then in culture, or what do you see as the differentiators?
You're right. And if I think about if you think about a lot of brands, I had a former boss once tell me, he said, when you think about a brand, you close your eyes and you think about a brand, it should conjure up an image, right? And so, having, been involved with Bowtech from the very beginning, I don't want to project my thought on there, but as we've talked to people, I think a lot of times when you think about Bowtech and you close your eyes, the image that it conjures up is innovation and technology. So again, going back to, hitting the scene with super fast bows. Speed always sells, right? And Cory, you and I talked about this briefly earlier today. It doesn't necessarily mean that guy needs to push the envelope. And, I'm not trying to shoot 350 foot a second at my draw length. If something came out and I could do that really easily, now that's another story.
However, the cost or the downsides.
But I think what we want to have happen is we wanted to be able to have bows that fix people's problems through innovation. And what I mean by that is back then, that Black Knight, again, being a dual cam, and it was fast, right? But that's all it was. It had a lot of hand shock, noise, vibration. And come on, people want to kill deer. I mean, all these deer that are in here, that I bought off eBay to make it seem like I was a good hunter. We want to be able to harvest those animals, and noise is a big part of that, or lack thereof. And so taking our innovation, what we believe our company stands for is coming up with innovations that help the end user. Just to kind of key on some main things. Obviously, we started off with speed, and that was great. But in 2005, we introduced a new cam technology called binary cam technology. So when we first came out with it, people saw it as dual cams, and then single cam was still the rage, right? So it's simple. Single cams are. They tune great. The king of single cam out there did a very good job of saying, hey, this system is something you ought to have as a hunter. When we put two cams on there in binary, people go, oh, it's dual cam. Why are you going backwards? Until we started to explain what it was that you were actually doing. So, if you create in the bow system the inability for it to do something different every time you shoot it, by default, the end user is going to be a better archer. Meaning some of the dual cams or some of the systems that you have today, if you pull hard into the wall, you'll get the cams to rotate. Cory and I were talking again earlier today, and he was talking about, taking one of our dual cam infinite edge bows that we have, right? We sell those in droves. It's a phenomenal bow for the market that it's in. If you pick up that bow in very light poundage and drop back with your fingers and kind of rock your fist back and forth, you can watch those cams do something different, right? So if that's happening, by changing, the torque on the bow, granted it's not a finger bow, but there are ways that people can affect that by healing the bow, high wrist versus a low wrist, and you can change that cam system at full draw, which effectively will change your point of impact vertically. So with the binary cam system, they're tied together. You have very solid draw stops. That cam system rotates, stops, and you don't have the ability as a shooter to manipulate that system to a large degree outside of which it was designed to do. Meaning it now becomes more forgiving because I can't change that bow each time. So that's really how we try to differentiate ourselves, is fixing some of those issues. Binary cams in 2005. In 2010, we came up with Overdrive binary cam system. So the difference between that and a standard binary system is that there's an advantage to having a split yoke on a system. And that's the ability to change the load of your limbs. So when you're drawing a bow back, most people understand that you're drawing the string back, right? The cams are letting string out. The cables are winding, being wound up onto the cam. So you're transferring load from a string to the cable. So when you're at full draw, your cables are under full tension. Your cables are not directly in the center between your limbs. They're offset. You got a string track and a mod track. So when you load up one side, those limbs by default want to go to one side.
Oh, I see.
Right? So what ends up happening is if you don't have the ability to change that load or effectively balance that load out, there are some situations where you can send a bow out where there's nothing you can do from a tuning perspective. So oftentimes what will happen is, even though a binary cam system will link the knock travel vertically because they're tied together, but from a left and right perspective, when those loads change,
they shift.
They can shift. Now, most of the time, it's not enough to affect most shooters. You're going to shoot very, very accurately. But what we strive to do is really get a system in the Overdrive binary with the split bus system to be able to accommodate changing that load. And in essence, what you're doing is you're making the bow a lot more forgiving. So back in the day, if you got a finicky bow, or you had a person that was on one end of the spectrum, really long draw length, or a very short draw length, you kind of start hitting these ranges in which it's difficult to get a bow to tune. Long draw length, for example. Hey, you got to run an arrow 29, 30 inches long for a guy that's got a 32-inch draw length, so spine becomes a big factor. And if you have a bow system that is not allowing the arrow to be shot where the knocking point is in alignment with the front of the arrow, left and right and up and down, you start creating inconsistencies in the system. So we look at those things and we say, how can we make a shooter better? And this is how Overdrive binary came into play. It came through a lot of passion. I've been here since the beginning, and I've had many different titles. Today it's, Director Bowtech Diamond Archery. Fairly broad. But my passion is in the product development. I've always, from the day one with our first lead engineer to today with our engineering team, I work very closely with them with product development. They're way smarter than I am, but I know how a bow works. I know how it feels and how an end user is doing it. And we got a great team of people around that we go and, hey, there's kind of an issue that I'm having. How can we fix that? Center pivot technology. We came out with that in 2007. When we first came out with it, I remember that I got a couple of them hanging behind you there, and you look at the Guardian and the General, and I look at that Guardian over there, and when that first came out, people were like,
I said, what
wow,
the heck did you just do?
That looks different. Look at all these moving parts and what's happening. And the reality is what we're doing is we're trying to gain efficiency, right? And so, what I would do is I'd draw the analogy of a diving board, and if you've ever been on a diving board and you get up there, you've got that little roller, right, as you step up there. And if you roll that roller out closer to the tip, the diving board becomes, stiffer. The frequency in the end changes. If you roll it back away from you, it becomes real slow, right? Mm-hmm. So what we would call a conventional system, meaning a limb pocket being limb putting place into a pocket at the very back, and the majority of the limb is not contacted by the riser or the pocket. That would be a conventional system. We make a lot of bows in the past, and currently we do that has that system. Where center pivot it'd be that scenario in which you would roll that roller out. So if you look at this bow for an example, what is this bow? That's a new bow right there. It's a new bow we might be introducing here, but the contact point is in the center. Right. And so same thing, if you were to actually take you take an arrow and hold it down and pull the end of it and let it go, it's going to bounce. Right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if you actually take that arrow and have somebody grab it in the middle and put the same amount of pressure and let it go, the recovery rate is going to be very, very quick. So it is, in essence, you're stopping that blowback, spring back. Exactly. So how is that an advantage? So you're controlling frequency. You're working more of the limb length, so you gain efficiencies in the bow system. So that can be quantified to the end users, less vibration, shock. When we couple that with Overdrive binary cam systems, you're actually able to use that limb throughout its length, as opposed to if you look at a conventional system, when you bend, you can actually look at the geometry of most single limb systems, and they have a belly cut, which means it's a thinner point. That's a small working section of that limb. So we're able to better use or leverage the whole limb as an entire system, and to gain efficiencies that will get you, noise, vibration, or lack thereof, and be able to also get performance. So those are some things that we try to differentiate ourselves in with the technologies that we have. The Flex Guard. You look at our tagline, it says refuse to follow. One of the things that we try to always do is operate with integrity. You know, we've had people go, oh man, you really need to go after these people for copying and that kind of stuff. Hey, they say, you know, copying is one of the best forms of flattery, right? You know, kind of cliche, but there's a lot of truth to it. So FlexGuard, we introduced that in 2010, hit the market, and look at what's happening out there in cable containment systems.
Yeah.
Right. So when we first started with our single cams, early 2000s, we had cable rods like most people. And then we actually went to roller guards. We didn't do that first. I mean, there's a great company in Wisconsin that did that. So we decided, hey, we don't want to follow why do we want to do this? And again, having an understanding that when you draw a bow back and you transfer the weight from the string to the cables, that full draw, cables have to have a containment system pulled out of the way so that the arrow can have a path downrange, right? Mm-hmm. So when you pull those cables over and they go under tension at full draw, they want to go back in the direction towards your arrow. Very simple physics. Everybody understands it. And what ends up happening is if that load, whatever's being introduced into that system, is transferring torque into the riser. So as I'm drawing a bow back, cables go under tension, holding a cable rod. It wants to push this way, which for a right-handed shooter is going to create a clockwise or right-handed torque into the riser. So in order to minimize that, we came up with the FlexGuard system. And as you come to full draw, what ends up happening is that FlexGuard is absorbing the majority of that tension being transferred into the system. So, people might think, well, I shot, dog-leg cable rods and I shot them very fine. It's like anything else. If you do something consistent, you're going to be, you're going to have consistent results.
Yeah.
So when you have something like a FlexGuard and the reason why we wanted to do that, and again, back to your point, what differentiates us? We want to be able to take the ability of the system to be able to do something different each time, right? So not everybody holds a bow exactly the same. So if we can reduce the amount of torque being transferred into a riser by design of the system, at the end of the day, by default, the shooter is going to have better results. Mm-hmm. So that's really what it is. And then all of that is this industry. It's a fun, man. I mean, I need gas to get back and forth to work. I got to pay it. So when the gas prices go up, it's like, God, this is terrible, but I do it, right? You don't need a bow technically to have happy life. You need God, but you don't need a bow to have that. So this is really a want industry. Now, I say that, and there's probably a lot of people going, "Oh, I got to have a bow," right? And you hear a lot of celebrities on TV. It's in my blood. It is. It's part of who we are. So when we're designing, newness really creates Actually, I think it really enhances the energy level or the excitement around product. And so I think it's important to do that. Not for the sake of newness to do it, but it helps you drive, and that's what pushes us.
Well, there's certainly I haven't been as involved in the hunting industry. I mean, I've been involved in hunting, but not through the podcast or anything else where I really spent a lot of time. I'd go shoot a bow for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, and then go shoot another one. But I have buddies who look and buy a new bow. In fact, a great majority of them every single year. Mm-hmm. They are bound and determined to get the new one and shoot it. That's pretty unique in the archery industry to me to see this. There's this long awaited debut of the new stuff, and then guys want to get the new technology, and they really geek out on all that. Engineering and technology stuff.
Oh, very, very powerful point. Now, from a manufacturing standpoint, it becomes very challenging, right? How do you do that? But we're not necessarily trying to market to that guy that's getting a new bow every year, although he can be that barometer, so to speak. If you come up with something that is making that guy happy, you're probably going to cover the masses as well. So that's something that that's very important in terms of newness as well. But I mean, bows are fun. I look at our lineup, and we have center pivot bows. We have, again, what I describe as the conventional bows, riser, solid limb, single pocket, containing a limb on one end. Some of them have binaries, some of them overdrive binaries. And so you can't check every box and make something for everybody. But if you kind of understand who your consumer is, who's buying your product and why they want to buy it, then you're going to be able to have a successful company. That said, I think there's a lot of people out here. I'm a gearhead. I mean, it doesn't matter. I was looking at your camera earlier. Hey, what camera do you have? Am I, I'm a professional in photography? No, but I looked at a DSLR and I'm like, oh my gosh, you look at all the different, things that are on. It's very intimidating compared to a point and shoot where most people want to take a camera and go like this. But I'm the kind of guy that I look at it and I go, I want to understand what it does. Can it make me better? I'm that guy that's willing to spend the money to actually take that and have fun and utilize it. Sometimes it can be intimidating, but that's what we want to do in our bows. We want that guy to get out there and just be able to go, hey, this thing will take me to next level. I actually have fun shooting it. I can quantify the technologies that are designed in my shooting.
Well, today, by the way, we're up here because we got invited to come on up here with a lot of local retail bow shop, Bowtech distributors. And we all got together, a big group of guys. It was pretty fun. We got to shoot all the bows. And one of the things that you talked about was this new adjustment that you have, micro
sync dial, right?
Micro sync dial. Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned was how, this is maybe not something that your end user will necessarily dial into, but the bow shop guys will really like to use it. And then those really high tech, the guys that really do gearhead, get into the gear, they would really like to use that.
Yep.
And that's pretty cool, to throw that in there because you don't have to take the time to develop that.
Right.
You could just adjust it a different way,
Sure.
But it's pretty neat to see you go that extra mile.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a lot of fun. I was talking to, in between all of our meetings and different stuff today, I was talking to Jimmy Burnworth, right? And he's a total gearhead, man. He loves it. So we're having him do some filming stuff on this new microsync dial. It's falling under the umbrella of PowerShift technology. And, man, he was just flipping out about it. So is that your everyday guy? Probably not. But here's where it's powerful. Number one, what we're trying to do with our bows is we're trying to actually have the ability to customize the feel. So this is something we've been kind of trending to this last couple of years, introducing PowerShift technology. What does that really mean? So in the cam system, you have the ability, and you think about it like this: if a guy is working out, right? If you could bench press, 400 pounds 20 times every single time, man, my goodness, wouldn't that be great, right?
Well, I'm close.
Close, yeah. Well, about 395 at 38 times, 38 reps. But here's the thing with bows, trying to get that energy, right? So if you're drawing a certain amount of draw weight, there's a certain amount of return energy that's going to go in there. But people are limited by regardless of your draw length, you're limited to how much draw weight you can pull. And obviously everybody knows the standard is 70 pounds, right? So where you get performance is how long you would hold that 70 pounds. So here's the thing. Back in the day with that Black Knight, for an example, some of the other bows that we did. So in order to get that kind of speed, you really have to maintain that 70-pound draw force curve for a long time, meaning as soon as you start drawing it, it has to hit peak weight right away, and you got to hold it for a long time, and then it dumps off, and everything underneath, what we call that is a draw force curve, is stored energy. The more stored energy that you can have, the greater ability you can get speed and, everything. So that's all great and fine, but one of the things that we've understood is that most guys don't ever shoot things that peaked out. They want the bragging rights. Let's just be real. I mean, guys want they want to go, oh yeah, man, I got 450 horse under the hood, but
right. But they don't want to use it.
You don't use that running to Dairy Mart, right? So it's the same thing with the bow. You want to brag about it, but you also at the end of the day want to be comfortable in how you're shooting the bow. And so what we've done in this cam system is we've given the ability with PowerShift technology is the guy that wants that performance, that holds it, he's going to be able to get that, right? But then with just a simple shift of the system, you can actually change how long you're holding that peak weight. And really what it comes down to is how comfortable is this for me? Where in the past, even within our own lineup, you might have to shoot 2 or 3 different bows. But a lot of guys pick certain things like size of a bow in terms of axle to axle. Hey, big guys want certain length axle to axle. Well, we may not make 3 different bows at 35-inch axle to axle for that big guy. However, we make one bow, but he can now take and change that power shift to accommodate him. You want maybe massive performance, or it might be a big dude that's got a shoulder issue or just likes buttery smooth. He really don't care about that. But if you only had one bow and it was all performance, you're going to lose the guy that just wants to shoot the buttery smooth. But in that cam system now, you have the ability to kind of change that and cater to it.
So that power shift technology allows you to adjust the feel, the speed.
Yeah, I can sell two different people the same bow because their wants and needs are totally different of each other.
Just by adjusting.
Versus prior to this, you would direct them into this bow, and then the other guy, you'd direct him into another bow. So as a dealer, it makes it nice to be able to interview your customer to find out what his wants and needs are, and then be able to take this bow and make it fit his style of what he wants.
Yeah, or for a guy like me, early season September, it's a lot easier to pull it back on a performance if I'm going on a late whitetail hunt or a late mule deer hunt stoved up at 10 degrees.
Yeah.
I may want to drop that back, and I can do all that within that one bow.
That's absolutely right. And you can monkey around with stuff. Now, sometimes guys don't want to monkey around with a lot of things. So this, again, giving the dealer the ability, that's a pro shop, Bowtech being a pro shop, product, that our authorized dealers have the ability to understand how the technology works. You read a guy, you often can ask 2, 3, 4 questions, and you know what kind of guy he is, right? So you can automatically get that guy kind of directionally correct to what he wants to do. And then with things like the microsync dial, where really what that's allowing you to do is, even though you still have 2 cams, and it's a binary system, and so your left and right knock travel is taken care of and your vertical knock travel is taken care of, you still have to, adjust cable lengths so that they're synchronized doing it together.
So the cams stop at the same time.
So if you have draw stops rotate around and one hits before the other, in a binary cam system, you'll still get really phenomenal accuracy, but what that will change is the feel of the bow. So I described it earlier as kind of a little bit of mushiness. I don't really like that. I kind of like a nice, crisp stop, and so with the microsync dial, the only way you could do it before is you put the bow in a bow press if one draw stop's hit slightly before the other, and you're limited to about a half twist. You're right. That's all your adjustment you could do in a cable, and then you get those synchronized. The microsync dial gives it the ability to get that feeling literally without pressing the bow. You just simply unscrew about halfway this dial here,
and got teeth in it.
You move it. Tighten her back down. You draw the bow back, and you got synchronization without pressing the bow. So once it's set, it's kind of that one and done. But really, that's not outside the norm of what's in the industry. Think about microtune rest. Think about microtune sights, right? You're spending a lot of money in the finite adjustments to get there, but once it's there, when do you? Yeah. You're not out in the field like, I think I need 2 more clicks on my rest to go left and right. It's done, man. You don't want to mess with that. Yeah. Right. So that's really what this allows you to do. That microsync technology. So, but other than that, it's just a bunch of boring stuff.
So let's get into this new bow.
Yeah. We do got this new bow. So, we talked a lot about the different technologies and stuff. And so the new bow, the BT-X, the BT standing for Bowtech technology, and the X is going to be our new series of performance bows. So X being kind of your high end. So you get one of the things that was center pivot as we introduced it in 2007, all but 1 year, they've all been fairly lengthy, right? Axle to axle, except for the Invasion in 2011, 31-inch axle to axle bow, and it shot really well. Now, just like anything, all of us know, we got enough experience in the industry that, certain things trend. It's kind of like, like bell bottoms, right? Today they kind of call them bootleg. They're not as quite as bell as they were in the 80s, but they're a wider, right? And so then you got these peg legs, and that's kind of like what happens with axles. Exactly. So you change, and granted, technologies and designs have come a long ways where a short axle to axle today can be shot just like a shorter brace sight, way better than yesteryear for a lot of different reasons. So if you look at the BT-X that we're introducing, we've had a lot of people say, over the last several years, hey, you got this new bow called the Insanity. Oh, it's pretty awesome. Hey, it's kind of long. It really wasn't. It was like 32 inches, and we've had other bows at 33 inches, and then we come out with the Experience. Oh yeah, nice. It's kind of long again, and then come out with
the big thing on that is because you run a very large riser versus in the past we usually just go off of this number from axle to axle.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a misleading number in the way I choose a bow, because I could look at paper and say, oh, this is a great bow, like you said, and I would get, holy crud, this thing's huge.
Yeah.
And so it is a little different because of how long the handle itself
is.
It
really is. And one of the things from a manufacturing standpoint, it's, it happens in a lot of areas in business and just in our lives, perception, right? Mm-hmm. So perception is reality. So if you have to swim upstream to change somebody's mind on what, axle to axles, and granted, it kind of happens in chunks over the years, but think about it like in the 80s and the 90s. If you had a bow that was shorter than 36-inch axle to axle, you were absolutely critical. You're nuts. You can't do that, sacrilege. Now today, 36-inch axle to axle bows are big.
Yeah.
Right. So again, we're kind of trending to that. So with our bows, you had the Invasion, and we sold a massive amount of Invasions. It was really cool. We coupled a lot of different things in that bow, compact, forgiveness, with the center pivot and all the other technologies we talked about. But since that point, we've had again, Experience and Prodigy and RPM and CPXLs, but they're all longer riser bows. And so we've had people say, hey, when are you going to get back to having something, kind of compact? And interestingly enough, it's interesting. I don't know what happens by osmosis, but you look at some of the other companies out there, there's another leading, manufacturer that's out there that just introduced a line of bows that are all 30-inch axle to axle. Big cam, so really changes your string angle at full draw. So again, there's benefits, and you still have the ability to shoot something that's kind of small and compact. So BT-X, combine all of our other technologies that we have, but there's a few things that we've introduced, like the microsync technology that we talked about, right? Mm-hmm. So it helps your tuning. Probably one of the biggest quantifiable things that makes this bow more fun to shoot is the fact that the riser is short, it's very wide, from front to back, so it creates a massive amount of stiffness. The other thing is that the platform in the limbs and pockets and bezels have been increased over 1/4 inch over all of our center pivot bows in the past. So it's a lot more stable platform. So what that means is, I showed you guys this earlier, that if you actually take one of our bows and you grab the cam and just try to load that thing, just try to bend it one way or the other, because of the wider platform and just everything that we have in the center pivot, double tapered limbs, everything that we do. Again, going back to that, we don't want the bow to do something different each time.
Right.
So everything is solid, tight tolerances. You look how the cam systems are put together. There's nothing that really moves or has the ability to move. So with a short axle to axle bow, we wanted speed, strength, and balance. And we've accommodated that. Now, one of the cool things is having efficiency for a guy like me versus a guy like Jason, right? You got me, Frodo in the Shire, shooting this little short draw length. Unfortunately, what I have to do is, like when I shoot a Prodigy, phenomenal bow, but in order to accommodate my draw length, I got to get that thing in the number 7 setting, right? So what that means is I get very limited cam rotation.
Yeah, it just rotates a tiny bit.
Exactly. So, with a smaller cam, I can get maximum rotation. Now, again, as a bow manufacturer, making it easier for the customer, which is the dealer, and the consumer, which is the guy going into the shop, if you have one cam system, it's kind of nice. I can take you from 25 to 30 inches. Mm-hmm. But again, we want to have things that are efficient. So what we did this year is we got 2 different cams that we're putting on the same platform. We got the X28 cam, which is 28 inches and down to 25 and a half. All have power shift technology. And then we got the X31 cam, which goes from 27 inches all the way up to 31. So you have these two major ranges in which most people operate in. There is some overlap at 27 to 28 inches within the 2 cams, but they're really designed specifically for efficiency for those persons.
So you get that maximum rotation out of it.
Absolutely.
Whereas, if you're before you had to choose, you kind of were stuck with what you ended up with.
Oh, you really were. And again, I got great performance out of all of our cams over the last year. They do everything I want them, to do. It is not hurting my feelings right now that we have a cam system in this BT-X and the X28 cam that makes it kind of an equalizer for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm literally at 27 and a half inches, right at 70.2 pounds, able to shoot my hunting weight arrow in with great speeds. In fact, I can trim off a few pounds if I want to off the draw force. But with the power shift, I'm shooting that in the comfort setting. I'm holding that, going back to that bench press, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, it's like bench pressing 400 pounds once. I can get it. It's kind of like this, getting it off the rack, holding it up, and then setting it back on the rack. I just held 400 pounds, right?
Right.
As opposed to doing a full rep. That's what power shift technology does for you.
Yeah.
And so even though I'm shooting 70 pounds, I'm not holding it that long. So it's very, very buttery. But again, it's a solid platform. I've compared the two. I shared some specs with you guys today. I said, you know, there's a lot of 28.5-inch guys that may be tempted, if they're that performance guy, to shoot the 28-inch cam, right, and shoot a half-inch shorter. Why? I mean, at 28 inches, there's 15 foot a second between X28 cam and X31 cam. That might be just enough. Now, that said, if a guy wants super smooth, go back to that scenario. If he's 28 inches and shoots that big cam, you're getting less rotation, and by default, it's gonna feel smoother. So again, this really just lines up to where you got choices.
Options.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What's the physical weight of the bow?
So the physical weight is 4.2 pounds. It's very light, and that's obviously with our revolvers on the bow system. It's kind of interesting about leveraging too. If you think about weight, you know, for example, hey, what's heavier? You know, 5 pounds of rocks or 5 pounds of feathers, right?
Yeah.
So you know, if it's 5 pounds of feathers, is going to be pretty large. So even though it's 5 pounds, you're
still 5 pounds.
It is. So
But
5 pounds of rocks is solid, but probably going to be small and dense. So if you think about 4.2 pounds versus 4.2 pounds in a longer, in a bigger platform, they really are different. You know, and so I've noticed that with my setup. I've shot our carbon bows before. I really like it. My personal preferences, I don't mind even in the elk woods packing a little bit of extra weight, because what's important to me is that, you know, 1/4% of the time that you're at full draw ready to execute a shot, right? You know, you just run up a hill, adrenaline's going, heart's racing, and you have stability. That to me is what's important, you know. And so, not to say you can't have that in a lighter bow, but again, it's options. That's what I personally choose. And with this bow and this platform, it's it's really been it's really proved its worth. Again, I was able to do. It's really tough, as I shared with you guys earlier. I had to do some product testing with it. You know, God, it's a rough deal. But yeah,
Right.
I shot a few animals with this, double-digit animals actually, about a week and a half ago. And
were any of those pigs?
Yeah, there was a couple hogs in there. There might have been a couple hogs, but yeah, it was fun, a lot of fun. You know, it was one of those bows for me. Again, having shot every one of our flagships for multiple years. Yep. When we came out with the General, that was a bow, and albeit it had an 8-inch brace height and about a 310 IBO. So forgiveness is going to happen by default of slower speeds, but it just was a very forgiving bow. It ate a lot of different spine shafts. It seemed like, you know, when I came to full draw, my arrow was on the spot. There wasn't a lot of floating. I'd squeeze the trigger and the arrow would go there. And now at a bow that's, you know, a solid 40 foot a second faster, and I was really blown away being at full draw and watching what my pin does and that stable platform. It was really amazing how everything was intuitive. It's just clicking. When I was out there, it was just shooting. I did a lot of on the ground stalking with the bow. I had been in several situations where I had to actually shoot fairly quick, like knocking arrows, shoot quickly. Things were very intuitive, and to me, that's a great quantifier. And hey, there's something fits you. You know, and so I've experienced that a little bit through the testimony of a lot of the guys, some of the bigger guys. I was just talking to, you know, Todd in our pro shop, you know, and he's a big dude, 6'4". He's shooting his BT-X at 31 inches long. He's been stacking arrows in there at, you know, 80, 90 yards, and he was amazed at what a short bow would do. And you know, again, that's a big dude.
Yeah.
So again, it's just options. At the end of the day, I always tell people with our bows, we want people to be happy with their shooting. And so you do have things that trend. You do have perceptions in terms of axle, and brace height that, you know, as you enter the wide end of the funnel, some guys kind of know what kind of guy that they are. But it really comes down to, does that bow fit good? Does it feel like home to you? Because there's not necessarily one that by specs it's supposed to be your bow. Go against perception. You may be surprised how well you shoot a short bow.
We were talking about this earlier, that it seems that the camo pattern seems to be carrying a lot of weight lately.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I really don't care that much what pattern is on it, whether it's black or anything else. I just want it to feel awesome and shoot awesome. I mean, that's my goal. But it does seem like there's a lot of guys out there that are looking for a specific look.
Yep.
What are you guys kind of offering for this bow?
So in our flagship bow, we have a process called dye sublimation, which, if you're not familiar with that, really in essence, there's a couple different processes out there in which camouflage is applied to a hard product, right? So one of them is what we have a facility out here called Water Dog. It's a hydration system. So in essence, a film of camouflage goes out onto water, and water is used as the substance that actually applies as the riser or limb or whatever it is goes into the water. The water bends the film around, and those pixels of ink basically adhere to the different cutouts. The only challenge you have with that is in some areas, depending on some geometries, you'll get some distortion. Dye sublimation is a process where you're actually, there's a sock, in essence. It's a long sock that has a pattern printed on the inside of it. And it's literally baked into the riser. So you would actually drop a product in there, whether it be a riser or some other component that you put in there. Vacuum sucks out all the air and really pulls that sock around the product, and then the pattern is literally baked into it. So the detail that you get is phenomenal. So that said, we have different alternate patterns. We have our main pattern, which is mossy oak, new mossy oak breakup, right? Dye sublimation. So you got your neutrals, your standard sticks and limbs and leaves type. Not to minimize the pattern, but that's really in essence what it is. It's your quintessential camouflage.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You got a picture of what's out there and what you're hunting
Your
in.
Eastern hunter camouflage.
Yeah, copy that, right? So then we obviously, like this bow here, solid black, again, powder coated, so really not a pattern. But we have real tree patterns available. Cryptex got a couple patterns, the Highlander and the Typhon pattern as well.
Typhon's the black like this Cory's wearing.
And we're working with a couple other manufacturers right now. We might be able to do some promotional things throughout the year. Sitka having the elevated tube pattern is something that we're talking about doing as well. I like that simply because it's something that's different,
Yeah.
So I think it's cool. But yeah, those are the patterns that we have on our flagship bows.
Cory, shooting this bow today, how did it feel?
Felt really nice. It does, like you said, it holds on target very well. It's a well-balanced bow for being short. And I think a lot of that is due to the wider platform on the limb system and the position of where the grip is. Another feature that I do like on that bow is I'm kind of biased too. I like a riser type grip with side plates or no side plates, so I like feeling the bow. So I did like that part. On the shot itself, it was extremely dead. So we did shoot it in two different settings, and there's definitely a noticeable difference between the performance and the comfort setting. I prefer the performance setting, just kind of more of what I'm used to in a bow. And the thing I was talking to somebody else, if I was to shoot this bow because of the IBO speed rating on it, what I like about fast bows, that means I can shoot less poundage.
Yeah.
I'm a lot like you. I just want to shoot a certain arrow at a certain speed, and that speed is usually 270 to 285, somewhere in there. So I'll try and figure out what I'm going to shoot, drop my poundage down, and up my arrow weight. And it's always easier to slow a bow down than it is to speed them up. So
yeah,
and it's just easier to control everything. So there's just a lot more shootable bow. So I think it's a super product. I think we're going to do really well with it. I'm excited. I love the look of the bow. To me, it's cleaner than just cleaner and cooler looking, I think, than the RPM. The RPM did really well for us, but I definitely like this bow. I like everything that we made better. The better cam system on it with the power shift system, just a cleaner look. The wider track. Another thing I noticed that you guys did this year, which is different than in the past, is we have a multiple sight window.
Yep.
Which is nice because as a dealer, we get a lot of guys that tend to anchor real high and get a low peep, and sometimes it's hard to get their windage or their vertical adjustability. So giving that option of raising or lowering that sight on the bow is nice too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And I'm excited to be able to play with the timing. Being able to time a bow without putting it in a press is going to be, a time saver for me. But like you said, I mean, most of the consumers aren't really going to be doing that. It's more techie things for myself.
They reap the benefit, we do the work.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So for me, it's going to be nice to be able to know, when we set up a bow, that it's going to be real quick and easy to get the bow to shoot. And so I'm excited.
I shot it. I thought it was pretty sweet. It feels really dead in the hand. Like after the shot, just felt so good on the release. Draw felt good. It's a nice bow.
That's the balance part of it that we try to get. So obviously I have a rear stabilizer and a front stabilizer, and I got the bow, to kind of feel and do what I want and accommodate the weight and that I want. However, if you take all this stuff off, one of the things that you can do on this bow and a lot of our center pivot bows, if you just cradle it out between index finger and thumb, just using them as a fulcrum, you're going to notice that most of those bows just sit in a very neutral position. Mm-hmm. Right, so they don't want to go forward, they don't want to go back, and it's not bad that a bow wants to do any of that. But we try to eliminate a lot of movement happening within the system. So, for an example, I have almost as much weight in the front of this stabilizer as I do in the back, and the reason I'm doing that is I don't need to put a whole bunch in the front because the thing is coming back on me. So the amount of weight that I put on both front and back just allows me to maintain what I personally like to do is shoot a neutral bow. When I'm at full draw and I execute the shot, I like the bow to either sit still or move slightly forward, right? Mm-hmm. And so again, having the center pivot and this riser platform really again allows us to be able to do that.
It feels good.
Yeah, you do get a lot of balance.
Short.
Did it feel short for you?
It felt really. It felt about 3.5 inches short.
Yeah,
I was going to ask,
but you're like 7'3".
But he drew the bow back like this.
I did some stress testing.
Both elbows.
I rammed it right through the draw stops, and it held up.
Yeah.
It looks.
That's again. I think about some of the things that we try to do. You look at center pivot technology, and again, we're talking about perception, right? So 6-inch brace height bows, right? They're accepted a lot more today than they were yesteryear. But one of the things that oftentimes people, if you net and compare 6-inch brace height bows, they're not always going to be the same. And what I mean by that is, your reflex of a riser, meaning the throat of your grip, coming back behind the pivot points of your bow is how reflex is measured. So in essence, if I look at the pivot points of the center pivot bow, and I draw a straight line across it, you're going to look at reflex that is about 1 3/4 inches on this bow for a 6-inch brace height. Now, if you compare that to a Black Knight in the early 2000s, same 6-inch brace height on the bigger Black Knight version that we had, you're looking at 3.5-4-inch reflex. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's more metal out in front of your grip, meaning your risers up here. So it's going to be more susceptible to torquing. So a 6-inch brace height on a very stiff riser with very little reflex equates to massive balance and performance. So those are things that, again, that are the end user is going to get to reap the benefit in terms of forgiveness and being able to shoot accuracy.
Kind of back to, for me, of looking at paper, of specs on paper to say whether or not this is a good bow or not, because I'm not afraid of brace heights, and I look at more of riser designs. And like you say, back in the day, the only way we made a faster bow was to heavily reflex the riser back, which then in turn made the bow not aim very well. And so that's where we said they just don't shoot. They don't shoot as good as a different bow. Same thing with long bows versus short bows. We still kept those 17, 19-inch limbs, and we shortened up the handle, so it was about this big, and we had no stability in the bow. So a short bow didn't aim, and a short brace height didn't aim. And now, just trying to re-educate people on, it's more about the riser design, shorter limb systems, a lot more stable platform system. So to sit there and just say that 6-inch brace sights don't shoot is out the window. I mean, they're definitely a lot more shootable systems nowadays because of the way that the bows are being built.
Well said, Cory. You know, I look at, you think about this bow, the BT-X, a legitimate 350 foot a second bow with a 6-inch brace height, right? And so what's amazing about that, and I think about the contrast that to, again, 16 years ago, looking at a 350 foot a second bow that we made. What's changed? Your hand shock is completely different, more beneficial today because of center pivot technology. The decibel level is way better. If you look at this particular bow, one of the things that amazed me about this is if you watch anything in high-speed video, you wonder how a bow would stay together. Not just ours, but everybody else.
Or the arrow.
It's like the arrow's a noodle coming out of the
I don't know how it hits the target.
Yeah, it's cool looking, but not to be real. It's not the best form of advertising. You're going, my arrow does that, my limbs move that much. That, you know, but keeping that in perspective, when you watch the string oscillation on this bow, versus even some of our own products, the string tensions on these things are they're high, they're amazing. But what happens is once you shoot, that string just stops on its own without a lot of dampening quality. Well, that's one thing I noticed is that 2 weeks ago I went out and I didn't put any cat whiskers or anything on my bow because I knew I was going to shoot out of a blind and I wanted to find out what it sounded like to my ear.
Yeah. Because
perception is reality. I could go, oh, it shoots X amount of decibels, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't mean nothing until you're out there. Good old hunting.
That's right.
You know, hunting technology. This is what it thinks sounds like, and it blew me away how quiet it was. So, you know, the way I think about this type of bow is, you know, hand shock, noise, vibration, and speed has all gotten better. And if you think about it, there's a lot of equivalents you can draw, even in the automotive world, right? So muscle cars, you know, back in the day, 1970, you know, get a, you know, 1970, you know, Camaro Super Sport, right? You got 400 horse, and man, it felt like it. There's some fun about that. Well, today, if you look at a Camaro, you're getting more horsepower, better fuel economy, all the gadgets. It's quiet on the inside, so you got all
It's got
those.
Wi-Fi.
Exactly. I mean, come on. You know, so that's really what that we believe that we've done with our bow. So not only is it just fast, but you got all the other favorable attributes that you actually want in a hunting system.
Yeah.
So we've raised the bar, you know, so to speak.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So you're going to be at the ATA show?
We are going to the ATA show. We have a short work week this week, and we'll be flying out. I'll be flying out on Saturday, getting the booth set up. This will be, gosh, what is it? I don't know, my 16th ATA show. And, you know, with the company. And
I heard I need a fancy belt buckle, and I've never been before. So
some girl pants.
Yeah, exactly. Louisville, you know.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I enjoy that every year. I have admiration for the industry as a whole. I actually really enjoy getting out there. I like shooting the other manufacturers' bow. I mean, Cory let me shoot, you know, one of his bows that he had that's you know, from a competitive company of ours. But you know what? I enjoyed shooting that bow. I can look at it and I go, hey, that's cool. You know. I really dig it, and that's the great thing about this. You know, we don't want to try to monopolize it.
I know somebody said today, goes, well, do you do a lot of buy-in when you're there? And I'm like, not really. I do a lot of learning, you know, and to me, you have to go there because, like you say, you know, shooting competitors' bows, you have to know, because I don't carry every bow. What I do want to know what everything else is out there, and I want to be able to touch and feel all the other products. And there's kind of cool new stuff that you don't get to see. Some small companies that are at the ATA that just don't have the advertising budget to be, you know, in all the magazines or any of that. So it's a fun time, a lot of great people, and this will be my first year in Kentucky, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. But I get excited. I think one of the, you know, number one questions I ask at the ATA shows, I'm talking to people, hey, see anything new? Cool. Mm-hmm. You know, and if I can squeeze a minute to get out, I typically look for specific directions. GPS coordinates going to kind of help as well.
Yeah.
But get there and look, and you can kind of see a lot lot of the cool stuff. Again,
new innovative stuff. You're such a gearhead, dude.
Oh, I know. It's bad. My wife, you know, she's, bless her heart, she'll see something show up at the house or whatever. Where'd you get that at? Well, I've had it for a while, a day. You know? So, but yeah, it's fun stuff.
Well, I want to thank you for having us up here today. It was pretty cool, and for doing this podcast with us.
Appreciate it.
We'll probably get it out there while we're at the ATA.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So.
Yeah. Good stuff. I hope people enjoy the product, but more so, come by, say hi, and we get to talk about more gear.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
All right, friends. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. For those of you who have not seen the Full Draw Film Tour this year and want to go, check out their website for their tour schedule. And if you haven't done so, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to the Gritty Bowman TV podcast on iTunes or Podbean so you can see all the latest video content we have produced. And be sure to have a look at the new Elk 101 website where you can find our podcast and other great elk hunting content. Thank you for taking the time to leave us your feedback. We really appreciate your sincere support of our show. Finally, let me leave you with this quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who in 1905 said, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Friends, always take the time to educate those around you about your role as a hunter in preserving the wild creatures of this world. If you don't, who will? As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.